There was a story in The Independent earlier this week with some comments from Andrew Grant, who's quite well known in city and financial PR, about how 2013 was a really rough year, not a lot of M&As or IPOs, and the financial comms industry really suffered because of that. But there are also some interesting comments from Andrew about how social media is completely revolutionising the city PR market. And I found that interesting because really social media is quite at odds with a lot of what kind of happens in city PR. Obviously, in the world of M&As and IPOs and those kind of things, a lot of the comms job is about very tight control over what's being said and making sure that you're very, very careful to stay within the regulatory guidelines. However, that's kind of completely the opposite of what happens in social media. Once things get out onto Twitter or Facebook or any of these other channels, you sort of lose control of that messaging. Everybody starts talking about it. It's a bit of a game of Chinese whispers as well. And interestingly, a lot of people have talked about this idea of using Twitter chatter to predict perhaps what might happen in capital markets. You can kind of take that with a pinch of salt, really, because obviously once people start using Twitter as a channel with which to make predictions, then that by its very nature will actually change how the markets react to that chatter. I think it's quite interesting that financial services and city PR has come under a little bit of flack from the social media PR cheerleaders, in this great sort of new Web 2.0 social media utopia where everything's about engagement and participation and two-way conversation with your audiences. They sort of think everybody should be doing this. And well, that's kind of true perhaps of more consumer-facing businesses and perhaps retail financial services. But in the world of city PR, it's very, very different. These guys work in a very heavily regulated environment. They have to be incredibly careful about what they say and what messages go out there, whether they might be seen to be making recommendations. They simply can't do that. So they're kind of stuck. I'm sure a lot of them would absolutely love to be using all these great new channels, but they simply can't, And there's a lot of talk, there has been a lot of talk over recent years about how social media, SEO, PR, all of these different kind of channels are colliding and eating each other's lunches, and maybe that traditional PR is dead in the water. But I think what this situation proves is that there is still a market for traditional PR. There are some situations where social media is perhaps not entirely appropriate, like city PR, like the world of M&As and IPOs. These guys, they need to do things the old way. They have to be a little bit conservative and a little bit measured about the way they behave and what they say. So jumping onto Twitter and engaging and doing all this lovely stuff perhaps isn't really for them. So that's not to say there's absolutely no opportunity for city PR to make use of social media. Perhaps they can't be using these channels to push messages out all the time, although maybe they can to a certain degree. However, when we're looking at the world of M&As, IPOs, that sort of stuff, you really do want to know what's being said out there in the wider world. You want to keep an eye on what messages might be coming from different quarters. And social media can be a great barometer. So, you can use monitoring tools to keep an eye on what's being said in the wider world and kind of put out any fires before they get out of control. And so, social media can be a great tool in that respect.